She stood under the blazing sun, her hands rough from peeling oranges she never had to touch a day in her life. Passers-by didn't know. They walked right past a woman whose signature once moved millions on Wall Street. Today, she wore a faded apron, not pearls. She handed out fruit, not orders, because she wasn't here to sell fruit. She was here to find the one thing money never could. Her name was Amelia Kensington, billionaire, powerhouse, mother. But right now, she was just another vendor at a street corner stand, pretending to make ends meet. All to find out who loved her son for him, not his fortune. In this story, you'll witness one of the most powerful women in America walk away from her empire to test hearts in disguise. You'll meet her son, Nathan, young, brilliant, and guarded, and the unexpected woman who might be the answer to a mother's deepest prayer. We'll take you into alleyways and high-rises, late-night diners and early morning commutes, where secrets unfold and truths are tested. Pay close attention. There's a brief quiz at the end asking, how many times was Amelia Kensington mentioned in the story? It's just for fun. Get it right within 7 days for a chance at our shoutout post. Watching late? Answer anyway. We might still surprise you. Drop a comment, hit like, subscribe now, and turn on the bell for more. Amelia Kensington was used to marble boardrooms and private jets, not sidewalk fruit stands and plastic crates. But there she was, on the corner of 3rd and Maple, slicing peaches with the precision of a woman trained in mergers and takeovers, now learning the rhythm of peeling fruit with her hands. The summer heat pressed in like judgment. Every morning at 6 a.m., Amelia wheeled out her borrowed cart, stacking apples and oranges, always in rows of 8. She had a theory. People reveal their truest selves when they think no one important is watching. And she had one mission: to find someone who truly loved her son, Nathan Kensington, without knowing who he really was. Nathan, 32, heir to the Kensington legacy, had it all: looks, legacy, and a billion-dollar smile. But what he didn't have was trust. Too many smiles came with hidden agendas, too many dinners with NDAs. He'd sworn off dating altogether, until Amelia decided it was time to intervene. But not with matchmaking apps or media spotlights. With fruit. The plan was simple. Every woman who showed up regularly, who treated Amelia, the vendor, with kindness and sincerity, without knowing her real identity, would earn a place in Amelia's quiet list of candidates. And then came her. A woman named Jamie. She worked 3 blocks over at a non-profit tutoring center. Every Thursday, Jamie stopped by the cart, even when she had nothing to buy. She offered coffee on cold mornings, helped Amelia pick up bruised plums when they spilled, and never once haggled for a discount. Amelia watched closely. Jamie never mentioned money, never tried to brag. She once laughed off a spilled smoothie by saying, "It's just juice. If that's the worst thing that happens today, I'm lucky." But Amelia wasn't convinced. Not yet. She invited Jamie to a Kensington family charity gala, posing as a guest herself, not revealing she was the host. Jamie came, wearing the same thrift store dress she wore to work. She held the doors open for older guests, complimented the waitstaff. And when Nathan himself walked past her without security, Jamie didn't swoon or pose. She said, "Hey, you look tired. Want me to grab you a glass of water?" No flirtation, no selfie, just kindness. Amelia watched her son blink, surprised, and then smile. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him in months. But Amelia didn't say a word. She returned to her cart the next day, selling peaches like always, and waited for fate to decide. The next Friday, Jamie brought a box of fresh strawberries, not for herself, but for Amelia. "Figured you deserved a treat," she said with a smile. "You make my Thursdays better." Amelia fought the lump in her throat, because this was what she'd come looking for. Love, not wrapped in luxury, but rooted in empathy. And as the city moved around them, Amelia stood behind her stand, no longer just pretending. She had found what she needed. And Nathan? He was about to meet the woman who saw his mother first, not her billions. Nathan Kensington walked into the tutoring center 3 days later. He hadn't planned to. In fact, he'd stared at the address scribbled on a yellow sticky note for nearly an hour before finally taking a breath and getting in the car. The building was nothing like his usual settings. No valet, no chrome-plated anything. The lobby smelled like dry markers and stale vending machine coffee. Still, he walked in. Inside, children's laughter echoed off cracked linoleum floors, and the walls were cluttered with handmade drawings and crooked posters. He spotted her right away, Jamie, sitting cross-legged on a beanbag, reading Charlotte's Web aloud to a group of squirming 7-year-olds. She didn't look up. She didn't have to. Nathan already knew. This was the kind of place that made people feel seen, not watched. He didn't interrupt. Instead, he waited. Quietly. An unusual feeling for a man used to controlling boardrooms and commanding deals. When she finally noticed him, her eyes widened, then softened. "You're the guy from the gala," she said, standing and brushing crumbs off her jeans. "Didn't expect to see you here?" Nathan hesitated. "I didn't expect to be here." Jamie smiled, tilting her head slightly. "Looking for tutoring? Or just got lost on your way to somewhere shinier?" He chuckled, embarrassed. Maybe both. What began as an awkward visit quickly turned into weekly stops. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes he sat in on story time, and always Jamie greeted him like someone she could live without, but was still glad to see. That mattered more than he liked to admit. But the deeper Nathan fell into her world, the more complicated his own became. Amelia noticed. At the fruit stand, Amelia's hands moved mechanically, wash, slice, stack, but her mind raced. Nathan hadn't spoken to her about Jamie. Not once, not even in passing. For all he knew, Amelia had no idea who Jamie was, and maybe that was exactly how he wanted it. Because despite the bond forming between them, something in Nathan shifted. Amelia could sense it. The more time he spent with Jamie, the more distant he grew from his mother. That stung. She'd started this journey hoping to find her son's peace. But had she instead written herself out of his story? Worse still, Amelia couldn't tell Jamie the truth either. She'd gotten too close, too invested. What had started as a test had become something far more dangerous, personal. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline and closed shops drew their gates, Jamie stopped by the stand again. "You look tired," she said gently, placing 2 granola bars on the counter. "No sales today?" Amelia forced a smile. "Oh, I always sell what I need to." Jamie leaned on the crate, curious. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Your son, you talk about him sometimes. Is he happy?" Amelia paused. It wasn't a simple question. Nathan had wealth, yes. But happiness? That was a room in his mansion she hadn't seen in years. "He used to be," she said finally. Then he stopped trusting people. Too many smiled at his money, not his heart. Jamie nodded slowly. "That sounds lonely." "It is." Jamie glanced down. "I think I might like someone who doesn't quite trust me yet. Or maybe he doesn't trust himself." Amelia's heart nearly cracked open right there. She almost confessed everything, the disguise, the plan, the gala. But her silence won. She didn't want to influence the outcome. She wanted Jamie to choose Nathan without knowing the stakes. Still, her voice trembled as she spoke. "He's lucky," Amelia whispered. "If it's him, he's very lucky." But things weren't as simple for Nathan. The deeper he connected with Jamie, the more he questioned everything. How could someone like her, someone who gave everything and expected nothing, ever understand the burden of what he carried? The empire, the legacy, the Kensington name. He began retreating, skipping visits, responding to Jamie's texts with polite, distant messages, always courteous, never vulnerable. Jamie noticed. And one Thursday morning, she didn't stop by the fruit stand. Amelia waited. 2 hours. 3. Nothing. When she finally saw Jamie again, it was by accident, outside a pharmacy, balancing a tray of take-home science kits for the kids. Her eyes were tired, her smile dimmer. They exchanged greetings, but the warmth was gone. Something had cooled. Amelia saw it in the way Jamie glanced at the street too often, as if hoping for someone who never showed up. "Nathan hasn't come around lately, has he?" Amelia asked, testing the air. Jamie shrugged. Maybe he got busy, or maybe he realized this isn't his world. Amelia's voice grew quiet. Or maybe he thinks he doesn't deserve this world. Jamie looked at her, puzzled. Amelia almost spoke again, but her throat closed, because even now she couldn't undo what she'd started. Her silence was no longer just strategy. It had become survival. She couldn't lose Jamie either. Later that week, Nathan sat at the edge of his infinity pool, looking out over the skyline. His assistant dropped a folder next to him. "Your mother hasn't made any public statements in weeks," the assistant said. "We're getting questions." Nathan sighed. "Let them ask." "Also, there's a new initiative proposal, the Jamie Moore Literacy Program. It's going viral." Nathan looked up sharply. "She's using her own name?" he asked. "Yes, it's catching fire. Private donors are jumping in, even without the Kensington name attached." That hit Nathan harder than expected. Jamie hadn't called, hadn't asked for help. She was building something, on her own, and she hadn't needed him to do it. That night, Amelia sat alone in her townhouse kitchen, real pearls back on, but the fruit cellar still alive in her bones. She scrolled through Jamie's new campaign page, videos of children reading, photos of donated books, quotes about kindness and hope. And then she saw it. A single line at the bottom of the page. Inspired by a woman who sold fruit, but never peddled pity. Amelia dropped the phone. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them. Not right away. Jamie knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. And still, she hadn't exposed her, hadn't asked for an explanation. She just moved on. And that's where things stood. Nathan, wrapped in a fortress he built out of fear. Jamie, choosing to shine without leaning on a name. Amelia, caught between two hearts that refused to meet in the middle, both protecting something they couldn't yet name. No one willing to compromise. No one ready to surrender. And as Amelia stared at the blinking cursor on her unsent email to Jamie, her confession half-written, a knock came at the door. Not Jamie, not Nathan, but someone holding a box, a delivery from the tutoring center. Inside was a single note. "We teach what we live, and we live what we believe." So what are you teaching, Amelia? No signature, just weight, heavy enough to break a silence years in the making. Amelia sat there for a long time, the box still open on her mahogany kitchen table. The note rested on top of a stack of hand-drawn cards from children at the center, stick figures, smiling suns, and "thank yous" scrawled in crayon. But it was the message on the note that gnawed at her, louder than any child's voice. What are you teaching, Amelia? She had once taught Nathan how to swim in their summer estate's infinity pool, how to tie his first bow tie, how to speak with confidence, to look people in the eye. But somewhere along the line, she had also taught him silence. She had taught him to scan every kind gesture for a hidden cost, to question sincerity, to expect betrayal dressed up in affection. And Jamie was doing the opposite. Amelia leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. Had she built a kingdom so secure that it couldn't even welcome love? She picked up her phone, then set it down again. This wasn't something that could be patched with a text or explained in an email. She knew that. And yet, she didn't know how to move forward without breaking what little still remained unbroken. Across town, Nathan stared at the blank message on his phone screen. It was Jamie's number, still saved, still untouched since his last cold reply 2 weeks ago. He wanted to text her, not with an apology. He didn't know if that would even be enough, but with something to explain the war inside him. He thought about how she'd looked that last day he saw her, not angry, not hurt, just finished. As if she had decided that love, if it had to be earned this hard, wasn't worth chasing. He'd been raised to believe people came to you because of what you had. And now, the one person he couldn't stop thinking about was walking away, because he wouldn't show her who he really was. The Kensington name had shielded him his entire life, but now it was the very thing keeping him alone. And the worst part? He didn't know how to let go of it. At the tutoring center, Jamie was poring over grant applications. Her desk was cluttered, coffee stains, highlighters, opened envelopes, a half-eaten granola bar. She hadn't spoken to either of them, Nathan or Amelia, since sending the box. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even bitterness. It was survival. Jamie had spent her life watching people bend themselves out of shape to fit into rooms they were never meant for. She had done it too, smiling when she felt like screaming, being pleasant when she wanted to challenge. With Nathan, she thought maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone different. Someone who saw beyond the hustle. Someone who liked her, not for what she could offer, but for who she already was. But when he pulled back, when he offered her surface-level texts instead of presence, it felt too familiar. Too much like every other moment where she came up short for people who claimed they were looking for real. So she stepped away. Because she wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table she didn't ask to be invited to in the first place. Amelia, meanwhile, couldn't keep pretending. She closed the fruit stand. No announcement, no grand gesture. Just one last day with a handwritten sign taped to the cart. Thank you. She stood behind the stand until sunset. A few regulars stopped by, confused. You leaving town? One asked. No, Amelia said softly. Just changing directions. And then, without fanfare, she folded the apron she'd worn for months and walked home. But what waited for her wasn't silence. It was Nathan. Sitting in the foyer, tie undone, eyes hollow. They hadn't had a real conversation in weeks, maybe longer. Their relationship had always been professional, sharp, curated, a boardroom masquerading as a bond. Now, though, there was no armor left to wear. You closed the stand, Nathan said. I did, Amelia replied, unbuttoning her coat. It had served its purpose. He looked at her like he didn't know who she was anymore, which was ironic because for the first time, she felt closer to her real self than she ever had in front of him. Why did you do it? He asked. Amelia sat beside him, not across, beside. I needed to see who people were when they didn't know who I was, she said quietly. I needed to see who you could love, without being blinded by the Kensington name. Nathan's jaw tensed. So it was a test? No, she said. It was a hope. He looked away, shaking his head. You didn't trust me. I didn't trust myself, she corrected. I raised you to be cautious, strategic, but I never taught you how to be vulnerable. I don't even know how to do that myself. There was a long pause between them, years of silence bundled into seconds. Nathan's voice cracked. I wanted to tell her about everything, about me, about you. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid she'd walk away. Amelia nodded, and now she has. 3 nights later, Jamie got a call. Not from Nathan, not from Amelia, from a lawyer. A formal invitation to consult on a new Kensington Foundation project, one focused entirely on educational equity. No public involvement, no press. Just a quiet offer to lead a team under her own name, with her own rules. She stared at the envelope for hours. It was clearly from Amelia. A final gesture, not an apology, not a bribe, but maybe a window. An olive branch without strings. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked to the small courtyard behind the tutoring center, the one where the kids painted tiles with their names every spring. She found one from a few years ago, "Love wins, even if it has to wait." Jamie touched it gently, wondering if that was still true. Maybe Amelia had changed. Maybe Nathan hadn't. Maybe neither had, but something between them had. And maybe, just maybe, the next step didn't have to be a reunion, but an invitation. That weekend, Nathan received an email from an unknown sender. The subject line, "If you're not going to speak, I will." Attached was a photo, black and white, slightly grainy. It showed Amelia, not in pearls, not in a suit, but in her fruit stand apron, sitting on a curb, peeling an orange, laughing with a child who couldn't have been more than 5. No press, no cameras, just her, candidate, real. The caption read, "Some truths speak louder in silence." No signature, no explanation. But Nathan stared at the image for a long time, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel guarded. He felt seen. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't losing love. It's realizing you never learned how to let it in. Amelia tried to buy silence with protection. Nathan tried to guard love with distance. And Jamie? She just wanted honesty, and got a test instead. No one was wrong, but no one was brave enough to compromise. And maybe that's what makes this story so painfully real. Because love isn't always stolen. Sometimes, it's simply missed. If this story moved you, comment where you're watching from and answer the quiz at the end. Get it right within 7 days for a chance at our shoutout post. Watching late? Answer anyway. We might still surprise you. And if you love this kind of emotional story, the next one is already waiting for you. Click the video that will show on your screen soon. We'll meet you there. Quiz. How many times was Amelia Kensington mentioned in the story?